This story might appear to be unsurprising from the start. However, it's certainly not. This story is suggestive of the plot of a decent wrongdoing book or film. With the exception of that all of this truly happened, it's Might 2005. Candy Williams is 36 years of age. She has recently moved to Florida, to Gulfport, situated on its west coast. The move represents a fresh start after a new troublesome times. Quite a while back, Candy was sick with digestive disease. The cancer was extracted, however long periods of chemotherapy were fundamental. Candy was in recuperation for quite a while and feared a backslide in spite of the fact that as a conceived, hopeful person, she did her best not to fall into uncertainty. Her folks were a colossal help for her. In the end, Candy figured out how to beat the illness. Florida promptly spoke to her. And without a doubt, maybe enchantment had worked. She immediately got a well-paying line of work as a teacher and a decent house to lease. There's just something single she's feeling, the loss of it's a man close by, and sadly, she hasn't figured out how to meet anybody. Candy chooses to enroll on one of the dating locales. Anyway, nothing additional enduring emerges from online fellowships, and Candy deterred quits utilizing the webpage. One day in August, Candy is running near the ocean. As expected, she is passed by a tall, alluring man. Running, he grins at her. She answers with a grin. Sweets keeps pursuing, yet sometime the sky is covered with mists, needing to stay away from the downpour. She goes to an oceanside bar. There she startlingly meets a man from the oceanside who is finding a seat at one of the close-by tables. The man begins a discussion and plunks down to join the lady. Candy discovers that the man's name is Joe Kerr. Joe from Yovan. He is 37 years of age, from the province of Indiana, separated, and furthermore, as of late living in Florida. He discusses his child, whom he misses. Especially likewise, treats jabbers about herself, her ailment, and her starting points here in Florida. She has a great discussion with Joe, as though she has known him for a long time. He isn't just kind yet, open, clever, and chivalrous. The discussion delays for several hours, and it's as of now evening when Joe strolls Candy to her home. As is commonly said, farewell, the lady contemplates the amount she would like something else to emerge from this colleague. So she is extremely satisfied with the instant message she gets from Joe sometime thereafter. This was my most pleasant night in Florida. Up to this point, Treats feels that there is an opportunity for something more serious for sure. Kinship is creating. In spite of the fact that Joe ventures broadly either for work or to visit his child, he routinely communicates with Candy through the web. The two of them see each other very well on all levels, and their associate extends Treats just notification that there's one subject she would rather not examine: his young life. Joe tries not to respond to inquiries regarding his folks where he was brought up. Candy believes it's strange, yet figures Joe should have a few terrible recollections, and should be surrendered chance to open that second. Is without a doubt coming. Joe admits that he was surrendered for reception as a baby. His new parents were magnificent, and he felt cherished by them, yet when he was 14 years of age, there was a mishap. An alcoholic driver crashed into their vehicle. Joe hauled his mother out of the destruction he needed to watch her kick the bucket. His dad likewise passed on from his wounds. Over the course of the following couple of years, he was raised by his auntie, who didn't really like him. That is the reason Joe couldn't want anything more than to find his natural mother. In December, a couple of months after they met near the ocean, Joe moves in with Treats. Candy's mother is doubtful as a matter of some importance. She feels that there ought to be a wedding first. However, she, before long, acknowledges the way that Candy is enamored, and in particular extremely blissful. For sure, Candy and Joe's coexistence is going superbly, yet at the earliest reference point Treats takes note. Something peculiar. Her accomplice gets no correspondence when gotten some information about it. He answers that he does everything on the web. Candy is happy with this clarification, and before long disregards the matter. However, only a couple of days after the fact, it turns out in any case Candy goes to Joe's vehicle to get something in takes note. An entire heap of journalists addressed to her accomplice lying on top the envelopes are wrapped with an elastic band. Sweets takes the pack in her grasp, and by the comment on the envelope quickly sees the letter drop number. It appears to be that the man is concealing something from her. Fomented, she approaches Joe and tosses the letters at him. She feels duped. The accomplice attempts to quiet her down and makes sense of that. These letters are from his ex, who can't let him be, he expressed. Nothing to treat, since he would have rather not disturbed her. He guarantees her that he cherishes her, and that he can give the ex his most recent location on the off chance that it has such an effect on Candy. The lady feels disheartened yet rapidly pardons her darling Joe, and Candy spend Christmas along with her. Folks, with his charming way, Joe promptly prevails upon her mom. She is likewise loaded with compassion toward Joe, as she has heard from her little girl about the terrible passing of his new parents. So she composes cheerful birthday from Mother. On the presents, Joe has tears of feeling in his eyes, and says he has never experienced something as brilliant. Candy's Dad has something else entirely towards Joe. He could do without him, and is loaded with doubt towards him when inquired as to why he can't legitimize it. Candy doesn't mind, she is blissful, and in adoration, the special first nighttime frame endures a couple of additional months and closures, totally startlingly, when Candy gets back from work. One day, a lady goes into the house and stops in the entryway. The inside is covered with tacky notes. They're wherever, on the walls, on the furniture, on the shades, on the items, in the rooms, even on her shoes, on the floor. It's only hundreds, many bits of paper. Candy sees that there is some sort of composition on every one of them. He gets one, then takes a gander at the other. There's a similar transcribed sentence by Joe. Wherever I can't. It's too hard. A couple of bits of paper have the engraving "Don't search for me." The cards are likewise in the changing area and the restroom and the kitchen. Joe needed to go through hours on it. There is something so obsessive about this that Candy is overwhelmed with frightfulness. By the by, she taps out Joe's wireless number. The machine illuminates her that no such number exists. This comes as an extraordinary shock to her, particularly since literally nothing foreshadowed the unexpected separation. No message is coming from Joe. There is no great reason. Sweets encounters this emphatically likewise because of the structure wherein the separation occurred 2 years pass. It's June 2008. One day, Candy is perched near the ocean when abruptly the telephone rings. It ends up being Joe. Candy needs to hang up immediately, yet Joe implores her to somewhere around listen. He is sorry to her for the aggravation he has caused her, and makes sense of his strange way of behaving toward the end. With his troublesome youth, he requests one more opportunity. Candy completely declines, yet consents to proceed with the discussion Joe imparts to her. The news that he has met his natural mother and sends a photograph of her via telephone. Candy transparently says she doesn't really accept that the story is consistent with this. Joe says that his mom has welcomed him to join her in Atlanta for supper and requests that Candy go with him. It would be under an hour one way. By playing for her treats, declines after this discussion. She doesn't have the foggiest idea what to think. She feels outrage blended in with compassion. In the end, treats after another call from Joe, consents to the gathering, illuminating him anyway. Not to rely on anything over fellowship on her part for reasons unknown. Linda, Joe's natural mother, lives with her accomplice in a wonderful house in an opulent Atlanta area. During the gathering, everybody is uncommonly amenable to one another. Albeit the conversation is just about unbiased subjects, the environment is some way or another unusually tense, and in Candy's discernment, this isn't made sense of by the way that the gathering incorporates individuals who have quite recently met. Candy can't dispose of the impression of a few imitation, and the idea even goes through her mind that Joe coordinated the entire circumstance, and the couple she met are finished aliens to him. To finish it off, a more unusual calls Candy, in the gathering illuminating her main, that Joe is a liar and that she will call later to tell her more. Candy doesn't specify to anybody present what she has recently heard and anticipates the finish of this weird visit. At the air terminal, she says a cool farewell to Joe, promising herself in her heart that she won't ever see him from now on. At night when Candy is sleeping, the obscure lady calls out to again. She says her is Leah, and she is Joe's better half. Candy discovers that Joe consistently stayed with her in Indiana and invested energy with her and their child, all of which it ends up taking spot while he was with Candy. Lee adds that he cautioned her about Joe, who is an infamous liar and miscreant. Candy is moved by the way that one can lie like that for quite a while. Joe wasn't even separated from Candy, doesn't actually accept the tale about his troublesome youth any longer, despite the fact that Joe is presently not her accomplice. The discussion with Leah is an extra shock to her when, not a lot later, Joe calls and guarantees her of his adoration. Candy hits him a liar and hangs up. Half a month after the fact, Candy's dad languishes a coronary failure over 7 days. He lies in a state of insensibility. His condition is sad. Lastly, Candy and her mom consented to disengage him from the clinical gear. Joel learns of his passing and offers his assistance. Candy is in such an express that she has no solidarity to dissent. The man right now is a huge help for herself as well as her mom. He assists with everything, however much he can, and acts with certified responsibility in doing as such. On top of this, he does all that to make Sweets need to be with him once more. In the end, the lady gets through and consents to allow Joe to move. And with her normally, Candy is as yet suspicious. However, their living plan goes very well. One day, while Candy was working, a companion calls her. She illuminates her that she has found Joe's profile on the dating site. She utilizes and the profile, as is immediately obvious, is right now being used. Candy goes to the connection shipped off her from the photograph. Her accomplice sees her illuminating her that he is an effective business visionary and at present single, who values everyday life and a friendly nature in an accomplice, and is as of now searching for another relationship. One of the photographs he posted was even taken along with Sweet's Joe. Just cut her out of the edge. It's as of now a lot for a lady. She tosses her sweetheart out of the house following a couple of days. Bizarre things start to occur in her home. The climate control system quits working, and later, likewise the clothing dryer and cooler. For each situation, it just so happens the reason is cut links. Following a couple of days, messages begin showing up to treats their items, cause it to appear as though they were sent by different companions of Joe's who need to defend him. For example, this content: hello. It's imprint. It's a disgrace that you and Joe have separated. Joe is totally grief-stricken. He cherishes you more than life. He's a magnificent man. Give him one more opportunity. Candy doesn't answer. The following messages are now in something else entirely. He will be in an ideal situation without you. May the most horrendously terrible happen to you. Candy's thinking about step. The police when unexpectedly the messages stop. After a month, while Candy is taking care of the lawn before her home, a weird man out of nowhere shows up close to her. From what he says, apparently Candy related with him before, organized to have intercourse with him, and consented to meet, and he just came for her. At the point when Candy denies it, the man hauls out of his pocket a piece of paper with a printout of an email, and Candy's location recorded there. When the lady expresses that she didn't compose it, the man flies off the handle and yells that he will not permit her to mess around and that Candy needs to go with him. The lady approaches the vehicle and lets the cop know that she is being pestered. The man leaves her property just when one of the police officers compromises him with prompt capture. Candy quickly opens her PC, and only a couple of seconds after the fact sees as a promotion posted online by somebody professing to be her. There is a photograph of her and a notification that prepared for whatever Candy is searching for: sexual experiences, including bashes, triangles, and lesbian trials. Close to it is given her location and telephone number, as well as subtleties of where she works. Candy obviously thinks who is behind these thoughts and considers detailing it to the police she doesn't do not really good or bad, simply because the promotion before long vanishes and Harmony returns again. Tragically, it doesn't endure in excess of a couple of months. It's Might 2009 and Candy is sitting in a cafe with her companions as she heads to the bathroom. At one point Joe, out of nowhere, remains before her. The man in a grandiose tone broadcasts that he can't survive without her, then tumbles to his knees, takes out a ring, and proposes to her treats needs to leave a fight. Results: Joe shows her the engraving Candyman, which he inked on his lower arm, then takes out a blade and waves it before her nose. Sweets runs out of the premises, actually shouting to her companions that Joe is here and that he has the blade with him, racing to the house. Treats calls the police. Officials before long appear at her place. She educates them regarding the entire occurrence, as well as her past issues with Joe. Candy is shaken that evening. She can't rest the following morning. As the cops exhorted her, she applies for an impermanent controlling request for Joe Van Keur. The application is officially supported from here onward. Joe needs to avoid her, however he in no way, shape, or form offers her a reprieve. He sends her many messages a day. They are admissions of affection blended in with dangers. This happens for a couple of days, and afterward, the messages out of nowhere quit coming. A month after the fact, Candy gets an email from Leah, Joe's ex, who keeps in touch with her, that Joe is dead. He ended it all. Anyway, he left things that had a place with Candy alongside data to send them back to her. In the email, Leah inquires as to whether she could send them back. Candy is contacted, yet she understands how this news affects her. It's at last the finish of her inconveniences. So she composes back that she concurs. She adds the topic of what precisely occurred, and when yet gets no response. It doesn't appear to be dubious to her other than she has not a great explanation, not to trust Joe's ex. A couple of days after the fact, a bundle shows up at the school address addressed to Treats. The lady takes it to an unfilled study hall and opens it, then bounces back with dismay. In the case lies an executed pig's head. The board calls the police. The officials, learning the origin story of the entire undertaking, ask Treats who, since Joe is dead, could be compromising her. Candy has no clue, so the officials propose to her that maybe Joe's ex deceived her, all things considered, and that maybe she is presently acting in trick with him. This doesn't appear prone to Candy, however, one way or another. She doesn't want to contact Leah any longer. To check this data, she chooses to call Linda, the lady she met as Joe's organic mother. Candy really questions that Linda, who lives in a lovely house in a rich area, would be Joe's mom, however concludes that she will figure out something from her Candy presence herself, and quickly inquires as to whether the facts confirm that Joe is dead. Linda answers that it isn't correct. Candy takes a couple of full breaths and attempts to process the data she has quite recently heard. Anyway, she has no clue about that. This is just a detail contrasted with what she is going to find out. Linda inquires as to whether she definitely is familiar with the homicides. Candy sees nothing. Linda, in this way, starts to recount the entire story, as Cindy definitely realizes Linda is Joe's organic mother. She brought forth him at age 18, and at the demand of her own folks surrendered him for reception. Immediately, whenever 40 years after the fact, new regulations set out the freedom to figure out what her natural child's name is presently, she tracked down him and reached him. She partook in this tremendously, and felt that it even permitted her to fill a hole in her own life. Joe told her that his new parents had passed on in a mishap when he was 12, and that he had been put with their family members who made a non-permanent family for him until he became free. Joe likewise had a girl and a child from 2 unique relationships. This was whenever Candy first had known about the girl. Linda was much more eager to meet her own grandkids anyway. In a little while, both her and her accomplice found Joe's way of behaving unusual. So she recruited a confidential examiner. It was he who concocted data that was stunning. The investigator said that Joe's folks didn't kick the bucket in that frame of mind at all. Joe's genuine name was Peter Zimmer. He was raised by Hans and Sally Zimmer, who embraced him soon after his introduction to the world. Peter likewise had a more youthful sibling, Perry. He also was taken on by Hans and Sally. Peter and Perry experienced childhood in the humble community of Mineral Point Territory of Wisconsin. Peter has forever been a troublesome youngster and has always been unable to adjust. In May 1983, when Peter was 14 years of age, and the entire family had quite recently moved to another house disturbing data neighborhood, cops that teen Peter Zimmer was let his companions know that he was wanting to kill his loved ones. It was difficult to trust the truth of these expectations, yet, as a safety measure, the cop chose to roll over to the Zimmer home and make sure that everything was all together. Tragically, it ended up being past the point of no return. The police officers end up in the center of a horrendous crime location. Guardians Hans and Sally are dead. Their child Perry is dead, and since Peter is mysteriously gone, doubt promptly falls on him. Data from the location of the crime made it conceivable to recreate the course of occasions. Peter originally trusted that his dad will get back then. At that point, discharged 5 shots at him. He cut his mom in the head so hard that he totally squashed her skull at last, piercing her through. There were 15 blows in all subsequent to conveying them. He hauled his mom's body to the shed. His 10-year-old sibling probably heard what was happening in the house and concealed under the bed, yet hauled him out of here, and furthermore wounded him. Follows from the crime location show that the kid guarded himself furiously as late as possible. Peter Zimmer then took the keys to the family vehicle and drove it for a ride. He was caught that very day and didn't deny the killings by any stretch of the imagination. Because of his young age, Peter got a 3.5 sentence, which he served at the Ethan Allen School, an office for adolescent guilty parties. Suitable to its name, it was more similar to a life experience school, with the exception of that it was encircled by a security barrier. The young men imprisoned here anyway had amazing chances to mess around in present-day sporting facilities, and numerous different honors incorporating even contact with young ladies. Peter met 19-year-old worker Belinda. They before long became pregnant with him. Candy is like deadened. One thing she knows without a doubt, Joe is somebody who won't hold back to do anything. The lady can't rest around evening time scared of each and every brook of the entryway. First thing, she goes to the police. She puts printouts of texts from the web in front of her to the official on the job. The cops are quite skeptical. However, they check the data they get. When everything is affirmed, even they are moved by the circumstance in which Candy has gotten herself. They stress that they might want to help her, yet they need to adhere to the principles. And as long as Joe has not disregarded the controlling request against treats, they can do literally nothing. Sweets make an effort not to separate, but rather it's difficult, particularly since she actually feels she's being followed. In some cases, she sees Joe following her in the vehicle, and she generally keeps her distance. Evenings, anyway, are a bad dream for Candy, particularly since there are unknown calls. Candy's mom, who lives in another city, fears each call, in light of the fact that each time she feels like the police are simply calling to tell her that her little girl is dead. Candy gets herself a weapon. She finds it hard to accept that the guidelines permit an individual with a no-contact request to drive a vehicle behind her casualty and stay nearby her home. Candy send grumblings and grievances any place she can. Ultimately, it has an impact. The Rose-Cuter's office arranges Joe's activities as following of the most extensive level. This changes what is going on. Totally, as starting here on Joe Clier is being scrutinized, and this implies that the man can be captured presently on October 20. First, Joe is captured while remaining at a specific inn in the city of Savannah, Georgia State. When cops by and by tell Candy the news, the lady cries with satisfaction. In May 20, Joe is condemned to 3 and 1/2 years in jail. He carries out his punishment and is delivered. Andy doesn't see him once more. However, fresh insight about additional bamboozled ladies in some cases comes to her. As per the Cinemaholic site, Joe was again captured in Texas in July 2014 for bugging his ex after she canceled their commitment, after learning of his dim past shockingly. Anyway, besides the fact that he posted a $150,000 bond. In any case, when he confessed to 3 includes of badgering in, he was condemned to time served. Joe then, at that point, demonstrated that he anticipated migrating to San Diego, California, and that is the last anybody has ever heard from him openly. Absolutely. If you enjoyed the introduction to Unfit Frame, feel free to hit the like button to show your support. Additionally, don't hesitate to leave a comment sharing your thoughts, suggestions, or any specific topics you'd love to see covered on the channel. Your engagement is valued and helps shape the content to better suit the interests of the Unfit Frame community. Thanks for being a part of the journey.